Before you say the words, "I have bad luck," there is a story worth sitting with, quietly, without resistance, as if you were holding a small lamp in a dark room. In a distant village, there once lived a young man who was known for one thing: misfortune. Whatever he touched seemed to fall apart. His crops withered even in good seasons. His trade failed even when others prospered. People slowly began to whisper that he was cursed by fate itself. And slowly he began to believe it. One evening, exhausted and broken in spirit, he walked beyond the edge of the village and sat under a lonely tree. "Why is life so unfair to me?" he asked the night sky. "Others are blessed, but I am abandoned." As he spoke, an old wandering monk passed by. The monk did not interrupt. He simply sat beside him in silence for a while, as if listening to something deeper than words. After some time, the monk spoke gently. "Tell me," he said, "when your crops failed, what did you plant?" The young man answered bitterly, "I planted the same seeds as everyone else, and when your trade failed, I worked as hard as others, maybe even harder." The monk nodded slowly. "Then let us look more closely." He picked up a dry leaf from the ground and held it between his fingers. "If I place this leaf in fertile soil, it will still decay. If I place a healthy seed in poisoned soil, it will struggle to grow. Tell me, have you only looked at the seed of your effort, or have you looked at the soil of your mind?" The young man frowned, not understanding. The monk continued, "A mind filled with anger sees enemies everywhere. A mind filled with fear sees failure before action. A mind that repeats, 'I am unlucky,' begins to shape every moment through that belief, not because fate is cruel, but because perception becomes a lens. And the lens decides what you notice and what you repeat." The wind moved softly through the trees. The young man stayed silent. The monk then told him to stand up. "Walk with me," he said. They walked through the village fields. The monk pointed to two farmers. One farmer, whose field had been damaged by rain, was carefully repairing the soil, removing stones and replanting. The other farmer sat at the edge of his field, staring at the sky, saying nothing but complaining about the wheat. Bad luck is often a label for repeated mental patterns, not an external curse. What people call misfortune is frequently the result of how they interpret and respond to events over time. What people often call bad luck is not always a mysterious force working against them, but a pattern formed quietly in the mind over time. When a person repeatedly experiences disappointment, failure, or delay, the mind begins to build a story around it. That story slowly becomes a belief. And that belief starts shaping how every new situation is seen and handled. Even neutral events begin to look negative when filtered through expectation of failure. A small setback feels like proof, while a small success feels like luck that won't last. In this way, the mind begins to reinforce the very experience it fears. Instead of observing each situation freshly, it carries the weight of past outcomes into the present moment. This creates a cycle where reactions stay the same, decisions remain unchanged, and results naturally repeat. Over time, the person feels trapped, not realizing that what is repeating is not fate, but response. When awareness is low, life feels controlled by outside forces, but when attention increases, it becomes clear that interpretation plays a major role in experience. What is labeled as bad luck often hides unexamined habits of thought, expectation, and reaction. Recognizing this is the first step toward breaking the cycle and seeing life with clearer understanding. Mindset shapes perception and outcomes. A fearful or negative mind filters experiences in a way that highlights failure and hides opportunities for change. Effort alone does not determine the outcome of a person's life if the inner state remains unchanged. Two people may work with equal strength, yet experience completely different results, because they are not working with the same mind. One may carry patience, clarity, and steady attention, while the other carries doubt, impatience, and constant fear of failure. These inner conditions silently influence decisions, timing, and even the ability to notice opportunities. When the mind is disturbed, even simple tasks become heavy and confused. When the mind is clear, even difficult tasks become manageable step by step. This is why life often appears inconsistent to those who only look at external effort. They see hard work but forget to observe the quality of awareness behind it. What is often called unlucky is sometimes a pattern of acting without reflection, repeating the same approach while expecting different results. Without awareness, effort becomes mechanical rather than intelligent. With awareness, effort becomes adaptable and responsive to reality. The difference is subtle but powerful. Life does not only respond to how much one does, but also to how consciously it is done. When understanding deepens, effort becomes more aligned with situation, and results begin to shift naturally. In this way, awareness becomes as important as action itself. Effort alone is not enough. Awareness matters. Two people can work equally hard, but their inner state, attitude, focus, patience influences results differently. Setbacks are often misunderstood as signs of failure or proof that life is working against a person, but in reality, they can function as feedback from experience. Every difficulty carries information about what is not working, what needs adjustment, or what requires a different approach. When a person immediately labels a setback as bad luck, they close the door to understanding and remain stuck in the same pattern. But when the same situation is observed carefully, it begins to reveal useful guidance. A failed attempt may point to poor timing, unclear planning, or emotional reaction influencing decisions. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" a more useful question becomes, "What is this showing me?" This shift changes the meaning of experience. Life stops appearing random and starts appearing instructive. Many people repeat the same actions expecting different outcomes, not realizing that without learning from feedback, repetition only strengthens the same result. Even painful experiences lose their wasted quality when they are understood clearly. They become steps in correction rather than proof of misfortune. Over time, this approach builds resilience because nothing is seen as meaningless. Each event becomes part of a process of learning and adjustment. In this way, what was once called bad luck transforms into practical understanding that supports wiser action. Problems are feedback, not fate. Setbacks should be observed as signals for adjustment rather than proof of being unlucky. What is commonly called bad luck often arises from reacting to problems in the same habitual way rather than changing the response. When a difficulty appears, many people act out of emotion, frustration, fear, or impatience, without pausing to see whether a different action might lead to a different result. Over time, these repeated reactions create repeated outcomes, and the pattern begins to look like fate. For example, if a person always gives up when something becomes difficult, they will consistently experience unfinished goals. If someone always blames external conditions, they will never adjust their own approach. In this way, the outer story of life begins to mirror the inner pattern of behavior. The important shift happens when a person starts noticing their own automatic responses. Instead of reacting immediately, there is a moment of awareness where choice becomes possible. In that moment, the same situation can lead to a new direction. This is where change truly begins, not in the situation itself, but in the response to it. When responses become more conscious, flexible, and patient, the outcomes also begin to shift. What once felt like repeated misfortune starts to break apart. Not because life has changed its nature, but because the pattern of reaction has changed. This is how cycles of bad luck quietly dissolve. Change begins with conscious response, not external luck. Life improves when a person stops reacting with the same habits and starts responding with awareness and responsibility. What people call misfortune often feels permanent only because it is viewed through a narrow lens of identity and expectation. When someone repeatedly tells themselves that their life is unlucky, that idea slowly becomes part of how they see every event. Even small delays feel like confirmation, and ordinary challenges begin to carry emotional weight far greater than their actual size. In this state, life is no longer experienced directly but interpreted through a fixed story. This story creates boundaries around perception, making it difficult to notice possibilities that do not fit the belief. Yet when this belief is questioned, something subtle begins to shift. The same events are still happening, but they are no longer automatically given the same meaning. A delay becomes a chance to reconsider. A rejection becomes direction rather than denial. A mistake becomes part of learning rather than proof of limitation. Over time, this flexibility in meaning reduces the feeling of being controlled by unseen forces. Life starts to feel less like a series of accidents and more like a process that responds to understanding. What once appeared as repeated bad luck begins to lose its certainty, revealing that much of its strength came fro